Greetings, friends, and welcome back to Scripture and Prophecy. I'm your host, Sean, and today is Tuesday, January 2nd, 2018. We are in the new year, and I hope that you had a blessed New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And there's been many times, and I've probably said this about 2017 and 2016, there was many times where I wondered if we would see those years. And, well, here we are, 2018. It's another cold morning, negative 11 degrees Fahrenheit here in the great state of Indiana. I hope that you're staying warm because, man, this cold weather is brutal this year. Well, today we are reading Genesis chapter 40 and 41, so it's going to be kind of long. Not a lot of commentary. It's mostly just the story that you'll be hearing this morning. We have Joseph interpreting dreams. So he interprets the dreams of two prisoners that he's in. Remember, Potiphar had him thrown into prison. And so he's going to interpret two dreams for the prisoners, and then ultimately he's going to interpret a dream for Pharaoh, and then be appointed as the most powerful man in all of Egypt. And so we see God's promises and just God's favor. You know, Joseph, even though he's had these terrible events taking place and happening to him, his brothers sell him into slavery, he goes in, and then it seems like things are good because he ends up in Potiphar's house, and Potiphar puts him in charge of everything. He's doing the right thing. Potiphar's wife is trying to seduce him. He refuses to. She says that, she puts a false claim before him, saying that he tried to rape her, and then he's thrown into prison. And we think, man, this is God's man. How could this be? But it was all to lead up to this very moment that we're going to read about here in chapters 40 and 41. All right, I got a lot to get through and not a lot of time to do it. So without further delay, let's take a look. Genesis chapter 40. And it came to pass, after these things, that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them inward in the house of the captain of the guard, into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continued a season in ward. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler, the baker, of the king of Egypt, which were bound in prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning, and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his lord's house, saying, Wherefore look ye so sadly today? And they say unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said to him, In my dream, behold, a vine was before me. And in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said unto him, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head, and restore thee unto thy place. And thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand, as for the former manner, when thou wast his butler. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing, that they should put me into this dungeon. So you have, basically what we have going on so far is we have the butler and the baker. They offended the king of Egypt, so he has them thrown into jail. They have these dreams. they're all sad because there's nobody who can interpret the dreams, and Joseph makes an obvious claim. He's like, don't the interpretation of dreams belong to God? Tell them to me. And so here we have the butler tells him the dream. Joseph interprets the dream that the butler is going to be restored to his position in 3 days, back serving Pharaoh, and he pleads with the butler to remember him. He's saying, hey, remember me when you're in the presence of the butler again. Then the chief baker is hearing this going on, and he wants to know if Joseph can interpret his dream. Verse 16. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head. And in the uppermost basket there was all manner of baked meats for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head. And Joseph answered and said, This is the interpretation thereof. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh off thee. And it came to pass, the 3rd day, which Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all of his servants, and he lifted up his head to the chief butler, and of the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again, and he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him. So the butler's restored just as Joseph interpreted, but he forgot all about Joseph. So poor Joseph is still rotting away in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Let's get to chapter 41, and let's see what happens. Verse 1. And it came to pass, at the end of 2 full years, that Pharaoh dreamed. And behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine, and fat-fleshed, and they fed in the meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored, and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brick of the river. And the ill-favored and the lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke, and he slept, and he dreamed the 2nd time, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up, 1 stalk ranked and good, and behold, 7 thin ears, blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank of full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for the magicians of Egypt, and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he, we dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was with us a young man, a Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. We told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dreams he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me restored unto mine office, and him hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and shaved himself, and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee, that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. Now I want to stop right there for just 1 second to point out one thing. And this is just, again, showing the character of Joseph. Joseph is not standing there going, you're right, I have this awesome gift and I have this awesome ability. He doesn't make it about himself. Matter of fact, he says, it's got nothing to do with me that I can interpret a dream. God Almighty, he's given the glory to where it belongs. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And he even says that with the baker and the butler. You guys are looking for people to interpret dreams. Isn't it God who interprets dreams? He's continuing to not put the focus on himself, but to put it on God. Verse 17. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, in my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of a river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in the meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored, and lean flesh, such as I never saw in the land of Egypt, for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored as at the beginning. So I awoke. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears withered thin, and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it unto me. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. The 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty years blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And there shall arise after them 7 years of famine. And all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason that the famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Alright, I want to stop there for a second. So, Joseph interprets the dream here that Pharaoh has. It's about 7 years of prosperity, followed by 7 years of severe famine. So severe that nobody will even remember the 7 years of prosperity. Something interesting is, as Joseph says, look, you had 2 dreams, and the dream was doubled. And the reason it's doubled is to tell you that this thing is established by God. It's going to shortly come to pass. Maybe that's something that, I just think maybe that principle is something that could be valuable to us. It's confirmed. When something is confirmed twice to you. Have you ever prayed about something and then you get a confirmation and then you're still like, well, I don't know. And then you get another confirmation. That doubling of confirmation to confirm that it's true, that this is the way. Those are things we should pay attention to and be spiritually attuned to. You might have a dream and that's the only time you ever have it. Well, maybe that thing wasn't established by God after all, right? And so I just think that's an interesting principle for us to keep in the back of our minds, to be aware of. I'm always looking for 2 confirmations, especially when it's a big decision or if it's something I'm confused about and I'm like, God, show me the truth of this. I need 2 confirmations about this. And so there you have it. Verse 33. Now therefore let Pharaoh look out at a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in 7 plenteous years, and let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God had showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried before him, Bow the knee, and he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, and gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Pharaoh, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and he went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years the earth brought forth by handfuls. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities, the food of the field, which was round about every city, laid up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea very much, until he left numbering, for it was without number. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of the famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Pharaoh, priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God said, He hath made me forget all my toil, and all my father's house. And the name of the second one was called Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt were ended, and the 7 years of death began to come, according as Joseph had said. And the death was in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you, do. And the famine was all over the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses, and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all the countries came unto Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all the lands. And that, my friends, is chapter 40 and 41 of the book of Genesis. Very, very interesting. And, you see Joseph go from all this trouble to ruling over all of Egypt. And, the scriptures even say that, Joseph ends up having these 2 sons. He's made, ruler of all of Egypt. And, when this happens, he forgets all about. It says that Joseph called his name of his firstborn Manasseh, for God said, He hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. We go through these terrible things. And, in the case of Joseph here, it had nothing to do with Joseph. Joseph was being obedient to God, doing the right thing, and terrible things were happening to him, things that looked like they were unfair. We may be tempted in Joseph's position to say, God, how could you allow this to happen to me? How could you do this to me? And maybe even say, how can, some people will even turn away from the faith. How can I dare follow a God who would allow me to be put in prison or allow this unjust thing to happen to me? Not knowing that all things, according to the scriptures, work out for the good of those who love Him, who love the Lord. And Joseph clearly did, always giving credit to God, always making it about God, not about himself. And look where it ends up landing him. Joseph goes from prison, to the most powerful man in Egypt in a day. This is how quickly God can change circumstances. This is how quickly God can change your life if you just stay focused on him. Joseph in one day went from being in prison to having a ring put on his hand, a gold chain put around his neck, and declared the most powerful man in all of Egypt in a day's time. So, I don't know, I've had a lot of unjust things happen in my life, and, there's been times where I've thought, man, God must not be with me. And, I think all of us can look back, if we were to take the time to look back to see where the things that God's rescued us out of and brought us out of. We need to try to maintain that focus, and not be distracted by all the things going on around us, all the bad things that happen to us, and remember that, if God is for us, who can be against us? Well, I hope that you've enjoyed the reading this morning, and hopefully after this week we'll get back to our normal schedule, and I'll try to get in all of our Bible studies this week, but I don't know which days exactly they will be. But hopefully we don't have too much issue getting them all in. We need to definitely get to our study in Matthew, and then we need to get to our study in 2nd Esdras, which we didn't get to do last week. So, with any rate, peace and grace be with all of you, and until next time, God bless.